A stunning revelation in what might be called the culture wars has just happened. A revelation in the Disney wars has just shocked the entire board at Disney. What is that? Nelson Peltz, the bombshell announcement that he owns 10% now of Disney. And here's what I want to say about the culture wars as they stand. What I believe the culture war, quote unquote, is the recognition that merit matters, the recognition that there is such a thing as quality, the recognition that sometimes there are factual statements to be had. The culture war, as it is to me, is the abdication of merit, is the absolute bastardization of the idea of quality. This is to say, I want to get into a little bit of specifics, not just throw out words like this, but and facts, right? Facts are a thing, facts are real. Quality. What do I mean by that? There is such a thing as good story. There is such a thing as quality storytelling. When you look at what is going on at Disney these days, it seems to be, to me, that Disney is saying there's no such thing as quality. We're going to put words on paper and call it a script. We're going to put actors in front of a camera and call it a movie. We're going to put slop in every aspect of what we're making, and you're just going to pay for it, except that no one is. People have stopped paying for it. One of the big components of this is Star Wars, and if ever there was a fan base that maybe would have given it to you, would have somewhat given it, and I don't mean this to disparage Star Wars fans. I'm not a Star Wars guy. What I know about Star Wars is that it is the only fan base that can get their fans as riled up as sports. The only thing, at least they used to be able to, that it seems is gone. But here's something worth noting. Nelson Peltz now owns 10% of the Disney company. Now, he personally owns about 1% of the Disney company, but under his tutelage, under his control, under his say-so, under his power is 10% of the entire company. 10%, 1 out of 10 shares are spoken for by Nelson Peltz, compared to Bob Iger, Slick Bobby I, 0.01% ownership stake. The only other board member that I could find in a few minutes of Googling, Christine McCarthy, 0.01% ownership. You got to own 1,000 more percent, 1,000 times more to be bringing to the table what Nelson Peltz is bringing to the table. It is going to be nigh impossible to deny him a board seat when he controls 10% of the company. And here's the thing, I guarantee, were Nelson Peltz to acquisition shares, were Nelson Peltz to put out, hey, consign your voter rights to me, how many people would do it? I would. I don't own a great amount of shares. It's better than nothing. How many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of shares could he acquisition in this way? Could he commandeer in this fashion? I don't know. It's hard to say. It is difficult to say. Many more shares now than he could have even, say, at the beginning of this year, with the absolute tear that Disney has been on as far as box office bombs, box office bomb Bobby Iger. Nelson Peltz said in an interview, every member of the board has underperformed the S&P. And indeed, Disney's stock is down over 50% from where Bob Iger came back. Well, so I don't know about the exact day. I know that it is down over 50% from where Bob Chapek had it. Bob Chapek had it cresting $200 a share. As of today, it was about 92 something per share. It got as low as the 70s recently. This is a stunning abdication of fiduciary responsibility, a stunning abdication of fiduciary expectation. What it is that Slick Bobby I is trying to do by putting out garbage on top of garbage, and we have the roadmap. We have the roadmap for these studios into the future. The garbage doesn't stop. And so here's the thing. I'm gonna jump a couple points down here. This is me talking. This isn't what Peltz had said. There is no reason, zero reason for Disney to fail. Star Wars, absolutely rabid fan base. Marvel, the most successful movie franchise in history. You didn't have to do a whole lot to win with Marvel. Disney princesses. What little girl doesn't love at least one of the Disney princesses? And it's not like Marvel or Star Wars. There is not a canon from which to draw. All you have to do is make good stories, and you've got another one that you can milk for money. Disney animation, The Lion King, Aladdin, all of these movies. That is an entire studio. ESPN will leave out for right now Pixar. And when you look at the live action remakes, six essential things that you're doing. Pixar is a type of movie. Live action remakes, a type of movie. Disney animation, a type of movie. Disney princesses, type of movie. Marvel, type of movie. Star Wars, type of movie. If each of those categories / studios gives you one movie per year, and remember, Marvel was doing 2, then 3, and eventually had 4 on the plans. If each of those studios gives you one movie per year, you have 6 opportunities. Gives you 6 opportunities every other month of the year. You could have a new intellectual property that provides a cascade and windfall for your company. Do you want to sell merchandise? Of course you do. Here's one of the biggest failures. Here is one of the absolute biggest failures as far as I'm concerned. These two right here, Marvel and Disney. Tell me about the great Marvel and Disney video games over the last 15 years. Now, they've only had Star Wars for a decade-ish. Marvel, Disney acquired Marvel during the, I believe, post-production of the Iron Man movie. Iron Man 1, 2008. How many opportunities have you had? 15 years of opportunities to put out video games. And they don't have to be killer video games. The Spider-Man video game is the only video game that I can think of from the Marvel stuff that has been a smash hit. How many characters do you have that you could just be churning out video games? You could just be churning out toy lines. When I was in college, I can't remember what they were, but we had a Hastings up in St. Joe. And Hastings has movies, video games, music, toys, all sorts of knickknacks, stuff like that, all sorts of culture type stuff, pop culture type stuff. There was these, there were like 8, 9-inch figures, and they would sell them like hotcakes, Marvel figures, and they were very detailed. They were very interesting looking. I mean, just gobs of them. There was a specific line. Once Disney took over, I believe it had to have been around the same time. Those stopped. Why? 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 Just ridiculous. The amount of money that this company has left on the table in the last 15 years is mind boggling. Abdication of fiduciary responsibility. Let's get back to what he was saying in this interview. The board members question the reason they don't want Nelson Peltz on the board, or so they say, is that they question Peltz's lack of media experience. Meanwhile, GM's CEO Mary Barra, who has completely proven herself inept through GM, through her management of that crisis, Mary Barra is on the board. And remember, this is, after all, a business. This is what your CEO owns, and he was listed among the top shareholders from the list that I could find. This was another of your board members. I believe the third name was a board member as well. It was 0.01% also. These numbers here are a far cry from 10%. I do not care how fuddy-duddy, how artsy-fartsy you think you are. There is a business to be run. And by the way, so I run another channel called Strip Cover Lit. If you don't know me from over there, it's where I talk about poetry, short stories, novels, creative writing, all that sort of stuff. Linked in the description below if you are not over there. I believe completely in the artistic endeavors. I believe completely in the altruistic nature of art at its core. Okay? You can make money with that stuff. It just has to be good. The art is lacking as well. It's not as if they are churning out art, film, or masterpieces. It's not like they're just churning out artistic masterpieces that just nobody wants to see. That Star Wars movie they came out with last, whatever it was called, it it wasn't a Cannes masterpiece, the Cannes Film Festival masterpiece. No, they show things like that there because they have to. That's not what was going on there. These aren't artistic masterpieces that no one understands, so they don't go see them. The movies just suck. The board questions Nelson Peltz's lack of media experience, but Nelson Peltz points out the last 5 movies in a row were losers. He says, if that's what you get from a media guy, I don't think we want media guys. Right? This is one of those things where Bob Iger is absolutely convinced that he's brilliant. But he's not brilliant. He doesn't know anything more than anyone else. He's just convincing you that he's brilliant. That's all that's going on there. Bob Iger, the entire board at Disney, there's not a lick of sense between them. And here's the last thing that I thought was necessary to point out that Peltz said. Netflix has 20% margins on their business. Warner Brothers has 20% margins on their business. Disney has a 6% margin on their business. Why might that be? Why could that be? Inflated budgets on your movies? You are reshooting, rewriting, reacting, re-everythinging every movie that comes through your studios? There's nothing worth keeping at Disney except for the intellectual properties. Bob Iger can go as far as I'm concerned. Oh, he came back to save the company. Okay. The entire board seems to be asleep at the wheel, including Mary Barra, the CEO of GM. Asleep at the wheel. Asleep at the wheel in her own business, by the way. That's why Tesla and Elon Musk are eating their lunch and are going to put them through another bankruptcy before the end of the decade. And the same is going to be true for Ford. There is so little worth keeping in the enterprise that is Disney that Nelson Peltz coming through with 10% ownership, making him nearly, you almost can't say no to him. You almost cannot deny him at this point. This is a massive moment in the quote-unquote culture war. Because if someone with acumen is actually on the board at Disney, things will have to be quality. Things will have to be quality. Merit will have to be spoken for. Facts will matter. Star Wars has been a failure and has had failure-type budgets as well. With someone who has a lick of credibility in the business world, you cannot frou-frou an explanation to why a movie lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Nelson Peltz will not allow such things to stand. Now, they should have just acquiesced. Disney should have just given him a spot on the board. Why? Because one spot on the board, he's not going to do much. Now he's got 10% ownership. How many spots does he want? Because it's not going to be long until he's at 11%, will it? The way that this has steadily climbed has escalated for and from Nelson Peltz. Should be terrifying to Disney because, like I said, they should have acquiesced. They should have just said, yes, give him a spot on the board. He can't do anything. Now, why didn't they? Why did not they? Here is why. When you're on the board, you have visibility into everything. So, someone like Nelson Peltz, who is an absolute killer, you can Google his history. I mean, this guy is a shark. No, he's not going to squeeze the pennies out of the piggy bank and then run. It's not what he's going to do. He's trying to turn the business around. And giving him visibility into the entire business by putting him on the board opens the entirety of Disney up and all of their shortcomings to someone who's not going to have proclivities towards Slick Bobby I. Nelson Peltz doesn't care. If Nelson Peltz comes in and realizes, oh, Bob Iger is 93% of the problem here, guess what he's going to do? Try to get Bob Iger replaced. Bob Iger has that entire board on payroll and around his little finger. So someone like Nelson Peltz, look, here's what it is. You want to know what it's like? When was the last time you were at work in the middle of your shift and your boss walked in? You weren't working this shift with your boss. Your boss wasn't on the schedule, but he came through that front door. Probably everyone's going to act a little bit differently. That was not expected. That is what Nelson Peltz is going to be doing on the board. He has access to a whole lot more information from inside the company and on the board than he does as an outsider. Basically, there's questions that if he asks, have to be answered. That is where we're going with Nelson Peltz. That is why this is such a big deal. And hopefully, Disney, the cultural monolith that it is, stops failing so hard. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with more people. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, this is just one of the things that I talk about on this channel. I do all sorts of stuff here, so maybe fish around through some other videos before deciding whether or not you want to hit that subscribe button, because I would love to have you back for the next one.